Ninth house in astrology is the place of growth and expansion, and it encompasses your beliefs and philosophies, as well as people who give them to you, so your teachers, higher education, travel, legal matters, and publishing. Let's take a look at the house and break it down for the planets through the house. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you'd like insight into your personality, your strengths, weaknesses, as well as if you're curious what's ahead for you, don't hesitate to book a reading at anastasiadoesastrology.com. There are also links down below. You can check out my website for my candle and oil selection. I create candles and oils to help you get through more difficult transits, as well as help you work with placements that you might have that are giving you mixed results. If you like this channel, don't forget to like or comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You also have the option of saying thank you and buying me a coffee if you like my work. So I have done a general video on the houses. I always recommend starting with that video so you understand how it all works and what houses in astrology represent. Do you personally have any planets in the ninth house? Comment down below. If you don't have any planets in the ninth house, listen for the planet that rules your ninth house. So you would look at the chart, you would look at the number 9, and you will see the sign on the cusp at the start of the ninth house. And then you look at the planet that rules that sign. So if it's Aries, it's Mars. If it's Taurus, it's Venus. If it's Gemini, it's Mercury, etc. So no house is ever empty, basically. Every house has a planet that is in charge. So ninth house is a cadent house. So it was angular. It was 10th just recently, but now it's 9th. So now it's kind of far from the angle, and we call that cadent houses. And cadent houses tend to be problem-solving houses. So planets here tend to be answering big questions, right? It's like a problem-solving house. It's also the house of self. So the problems that we're solving in the ninth house are those of who am I? Why am I here? What do I believe? Hence, why this is the place of philosophy. So it represents your beliefs, your guiding principles, your kind of direction in the world. And this house has been known to be called the house of God, as the third house, which is the house exactly opposite the ninth, is the house of the goddess, because the third house is very personal. It's your everyday rounds, it's the routes that you take, it's kind of more comfortable and intimate. So the moon is happy in the third house. And the ninth house, being the house of God, is the faraway journeys, right? People used to travel far to honor their beliefs, the whole concept of pilgrimage and going on a long adventure to Mecca or to other places to honor, things that are core to you. So in the third house, we stay local. With the moon in the ninth house, we go on a long journey. And of course, in our day and age, not a lot of people are making pilgrimages, but we're still traveling. And a lot of times travel is meant to expand our mind. So travel is also very much part of the domain of the ninth house. Ninth house is the joy of the sun. So if you're born with the sun in the ninth house, I congratulate you. It means the sun is very happy to be in the ninth house because the sun is our identity. It's, it's very like pure spiritual identity. And ninth house is the place where you never stop fine-tuning. You never stop asking questions. It's very much a literal place of identity creation. So putting the sun in the ninth house makes the sun feel quite happy because the virtue of self-knowledge is made easier in the ninth house. So what other things ninth house represents? It holds religion, your relationship to religion. If you have Saturn in the ninth house, you're likely to be more skeptical, right? If you have Mars and Aries, you're likely to be more forceful. It represents your life philosophy, your beliefs about yourself and your place in the world. So are you optimistic with Jupiter in the ninth house, or are you more skeptical and you tend to see the world as a struggle with Saturn in the ninth house? You know, like travel, like I mentioned, because it's a very directional house. Here we're like trying to find a purpose, trying to find meaning. So people with active ninth house often travel a lot. I have my moon in the ninth house, so I definitely resonate with that. And, you know, the planets in the ninth house can also show how successful your journey might be. For example, it might be easier with Venus versus Saturn here. It also holds your teachers or gurus, your mentors, your guides. Not every planet in our chart always represents us. Sometimes they literally can represent other people. So this would be a good example. And your higher mind, your attitude towards life, right? Are you more curious? Are you more open-minded? Are you philosophical? Are you spiritual? All of those kind of things can be seen through the ninth house. So let's take a look at the planets through the ninth house. Not to be repeating myself, but once again, if there's no planets in your ninth house, just listen for the planet that rules the house. Or you can listen for both. If you have planets, just listen for the planet that rules it and the planets in the house. That will give you a more comprehensive picture. So if you have the sun in the ninth house, like I said, this is the sun in its joy. So it means your sun is strengthened by the position in the ninth house. Here you are very philosophical. You are very spiritual. Spirituality is important. Self-understanding is important. You're likely to strive for higher knowledge. This is not a placement for someone who doesn't go to university, unless, of course, there are some other aspects or some planets involved. You are likely to be someone who will maybe even get multiple degrees with this placement. So education becomes really important. Traveling becomes super important as part of your identity formation, right? That would apply also if you have Leo in your ninth house, because by traveling, by meeting people of different cultures, by having conversations, by learning languages is how you understand yourself. So you need deeper, longer adventures, right? And like a stronger, bigger interest in traveling far and wide and meeting people. Watch out for being too pushy with your beliefs, right? And sort of certain that your way is the only right way. And you can also be, another thing here, you can also be highly impacted and influenced by your teachers. So having teachers who are very paternal, or even your father be a teacher or someone who travels a lot, someone who is in education, is highly likely here. As well as your beliefs being shaped by your father and your love for travel being shaped by your father, or the father-like figure. Sometimes the mom takes the role of the father. And please let me know how this resonates down below. If you have the moon in the ninth house, the moon represents your emotions, your inner world, and your needs. So you need to learn, right? You're someone who really needs to keep exploring. And that could show up through travel, it could show up through education. You may feel stagnant if you're sort of in the same place for a long time. For the same reason, when you have this placement, you may also move a lot, or maybe you've moved a lot as a child, right? You got to see a lot, and now that is part of what you strive towards. Of course, not everybody moves for pleasure, right? There might also be other reasons why you move. For example, I have the moon in the ninth house, and I lived in 3 different countries by the age 10. So I've experienced a lot of that as a kid and a lot of travel, and I think that is now a big part of my identity, and it's like part of what I need, right? So initially it wasn't inspired by my own desires, so but it did become part of my identity. So you can be very nurturing in terms of teaching other people things. I get told that I explain things in a very comprehensive way, and I'm optimistic. So as a teacher, I guess people perceive me as quite nurturing. There might be skills for languages, especially if you have your moon in Virgo or Gemini, or moon in Cancer. Moon in Taurus might also bring that. And spiritually, this is interesting because like ninth house is the place of faith, and the moon represents comfort. So a lot of times you may find comfort in a spiritual practice. Comfort becomes less so about a physical place. It becomes more about having a philosophical disposition, having a belief system, having something that you rely on, right? Like I think for me, a lot of it is meditation, a lot of it is astrology. No matter where I am, I go on vacations, I film videos, I talk about astrology nonstop. So that's what home is for people with the moon in the ninth house. It could also be a spiritual practice or a religion, like an actual religion that is part of your identity. So maybe you travel to different countries and you find a church that represents your religion there. And sometimes your beliefs can also be more emotional rather than logical, which I don't know if I agree with for myself personally, but if it's emotional, it's emotional. You can't really, I'm subjective about myself, obviously. So let me know if that's your placement. Do you resonate? Are you someone who craves travel, needs to study? Is that about you? If you have Mercury in the ninth house, this is another strong placement for language skills, especially if you have Mercury in Gemini or Mercury in Virgo, very powerful Mercury placements. You are likely to be someone who is an eternal student, who is really good at learning different languages, picks up things quickly, maybe likes to share stories with other people. You might be drawn to be a teacher or to work in sales or work with foreigners, right? There might be a lot of kind of messaging with people you met far away, or maybe friends who moved away. You're likely to be very interested in foreign cultures, foreign people. If you are a Pisces rising or Sagittarius rising, your Mercury is in the ninth house, you're more likely to be drawn to dating a foreign person. Mercury is quick, right? Mercury is quick, so you might be even getting multiple educations. So you may be faster in terms of graduating, right? Because you have a quicker turnaround. Your interests might also be changing pretty quickly. And you're also likely to have teachers who are very much stimulating your mind, teachers that engaged your curiosity instead of teachers that just gave you assignments. And that will, of course, come, maybe you have other placements and other placements will come into play. So it's not just dependent on Mercury, but that is the description for Mercury in general. And there might also be that tendency, that kind of quickness, not only when it comes to, education. It can also show up in your religious beliefs, where you're constantly questioning and approaching religion from a more analytical, scientific type perspective. Maybe even have a desire to tear things apart and look at them separately, right? Because Mercury tends to take things apart. If you have Venus in the ninth house, Venus in the ninth is usually a strong indicator of marrying a foreigner or meeting someone during travels, or it could also be a sign that you just love to travel. And you're likely to have more pleasant experiences, unless your Venus is in Aries, Scorpio, or Virgo. Those are a bit more complicated. That's why I highly recommend checking out my Venus candle selection as a remediation measure. It doesn't mean your experience becomes negative if you have those planets, but it does mean that there might be more challenges connected to travel, or maybe your experience is a bit of a mixed bag. If your Venus is in Libra, Taurus, or Pisces, it is likely to be completely pleasurable and there's no difficult aspects to the Venus. Then you're lucky. It's a very lucky placement to have. But regardless of the sign, you love to travel, you enjoy meeting people of different cultures, you're likely to be very tolerant and very open-minded, and sort of find a lot of pleasure in meeting people of different cultures. You are not going to be someone who is going to be like too judgmental of them, right? You're open to new experiences. You're interested in writing. Potentially you may enjoy writing or presenting your work in front of other people. May have sort of high ideals and just a generally idealistic attitude towards life. It's quite opposite of having like Saturn here, for example, where you're becoming more stern and more serious. So there's more joy in terms of seeing life. And you may also gravitate towards going places that are beautiful, especially if it's like Venus in Libra, for example, or Taurus, right? Like you would go to places that are classically, aesthetically pleasing. While maybe if you have your Venus in Aries, you may choose to go places that nobody has gone before because it's Venus in Aries, right? She's very feisty. She doesn't care for things that other people might do. And finding a partner who is as open-minded as you are is likely, and it's someone who you would build a connection with, someone who is well-educated, someone who is broad-minded, tolerant of different people and different cultures. You will find more, you will find more alignment with a partner like that. If you have Mars in the 9th house, I've heard this been compared to like being a good exorcist because you're like, wherever Mars is, you tend to fight for things, unless it's Mars in Libra, Taurus, or what's the one? Cancer. Then you're maybe more conflict avoidant, but other placements you're likely to be more feisty. So you may have a very strong opinion about religion, about philosophy. You may have a more like militant, combative view of the world, where you feel like it's just one battle after the other. Even if you don't consciously feel that way, there might be just a sense of like, you gotta fight for your convictions, you gotta fight for your beliefs, and you're likely more willing to get into a heated discussion about your beliefs, right? Sort of tell people why you think the way you think and not shy away from a conversation. You're likely to be independent in thought and independent in travel, potentially. So you don't feel afraid of solo travel, right? You're kind of quite open to going on adventure for the most part, unless of course there's sign or aspect energy that contradicts that. You may also have a strong desire to pursue education, and you may be getting education in some kind of militant, athletic maybe sphere. Maybe you're working as like a physical education teacher at a school, something like that. And you're also more likely to get into arguments with your teachers and sort of not shy away from, telling them about your beliefs and your ideals. So let me know how this resonates. Let me know, how has your experience with teachers been like? Any fights? How do you approach travel? What are your life philosophies? Let me know. If you have Jupiter in the 9th house, so Jupiter in the 9th house is also likely to give flair for languages. Jupiter expands. 9th house is education, right? It's travel, so there might be more learning, more traveling. There might be a lot of good luck when it comes to travel, especially if it's Jupiter in Pisces, Sagittarius, or Cancer. Less so if it's Jupiter in Capricorn, Virgo, or Gemini. I have Jupiter oils for that, so check out my website. But Jupiter expands. Jupiter is about growth, and 9th house being the place of the mind. We tend to grow through learning. We tend to learn more. We tend to be more spiritual and more moral with Jupiter here, right? Like Jupiter is like a guide, a teacher, a guru. So you may have an extra philosophical disposition. And you're also, if it's a strong Jupiter, you're also quite likely to be blessed with good teachers, like having teachers who opened your eyes, having teachers that were supportive and generous and even jolly. Maybe they were like, you know, big and supportive of your, like, big in spirit and sometimes in physical body, supportive of your growth. And you may be quite lucky or drawn to working in travel industry, being a writer, being a teacher. You might find a lot of enjoyment in having a career that involves those kind of things, and maybe even make a lot of money through education, through travel, through writing. You can also be a good lawyer potentially, or be drawn to be a lawyer, or maybe teaching law, kind of like teaching morals to other people. I can see here very much. If you have Saturn in the 9th house, so Saturn, like I said, is a bit more stern. Early in life, you may sort of see life as difficult. You may see life as a series of misfortunes, and watch out for encompassing that into your life view and starting to believe that that is what life is, versus seeing that as a part of life, versus, you know, like as a part of life that has a lot more different colors. So it's important to address that you, with Saturn in the 9th, you are likely to find yourself in some type of like managerial, organizational positions when it comes to education and travel. Maybe you're the friend who always plans the trip. Maybe you're the parent who's always the lead parent in school. Travel might come into your life with delay, where initially maybe you can't leave your home for some reason. Maybe you're working to get enough money, and journeys can also are likely to happen more easily for business versus pleasure. And of course that gets better with time, as everything does with Saturn, and the same with education, right? Initially, when you're young, you may perceive your teachers as quite oppressive and restrictive and maybe dogmatic, but then as you get older, you're likely to be able to see the benefits that they have taught you. Perhaps you're able to appreciate the dedication and the patience and the hard work ethic that they have instilled in you. You may also benefit from working with older foreigners, because Saturn is our elders and 9th house is foreigners. So dealing maybe with managing some elder rich people's money where you get to travel for work could be a good inspiration here. And like I said, initially this could feel a bit heavy, as Saturn tends to do, but then as you get older, you're likely to find your belief system, your philosophy. You may be also someone who's like learning by doing things and learning with time, and you don't approach things lightly, right? It's not Mercury, maybe in the 9th house, can write like 15 short stories. Here, if you're writing with like dedication, diligence, you do your research, you get stuff done, and it's going to be correct and to the point and perhaps detailed and descriptive. Very, very well done. But yeah, like, sometimes like in terms of difficulty early on, there might be, maybe you grew up in the family that was very religious, or your parents who were very strict, or teachers who were very difficult. But then it could also be the reason why you feel inspired to overcome it and do better. If you have Uranus in the 9th house, so this is kind of fun, but in terms of your beliefs, they can change really quickly. So your world views and your life philosophies can go through upheavals a lot of times. You might be someone who's like more open to a revolution of the mind, right? You hear something, and usually the more out there, the more different, the more shocking to other people, the better, because you feel like you like to be different than other people, at least in terms of what you believe in. So, so yeah, like going through like periods of revelation and then breaking down the old and then rebuilding the new can be likely. Of course, it's interesting because I was born when Saturn and Uranus were like close together. So then it's like you go through periods of being rebellious, but then you also do Saturnian thing where suddenly you sort of settle down and stick to one belief, but then Uranus kicks in again, gets activated by some aspect, and it's time to rebuild again. So travel opportunities can come up suddenly into your life, and travel can also bring exciting turns of events. Like you go for a 5-day vacation, you fall in love, you move to Hawaii, that kind of thing. And if that's your placement, please let me know if you feel this adventurous, rebellious, revolutionary type attitude when it comes to your beliefs, maybe even education. Maybe, I can see Uranus in the 9th house wanting to study something that's very scientific, very future oriented, very sort of shocking to other people. And traveling, wanting to go to places that are off the beaten path, not like going to Paris for vacation, but instead going to Galapagos Islands or something like that. If you have Neptune in the 9th house, you're likely to be very spiritual, but maybe sort of hippie in your attitude, sort of like it's all something, it's all just a dream. Very idealistic in a lot of ways, but at the same time, maybe more prone to joining a cult or getting swept away by ideas and ideals. So do not let yourself get pulled into a cult. Be careful. Very generous with other people. Very, I think, supportive and like spiritual and encouraging of other people in their growth. Sometimes you can be a great writer, especially if you have your midheaven in the 9th house, which happens sometimes. Your imagination is quite strong. You can tell stories about religion and maybe use that as like a backdrop of some kind of story that you're telling. And you may ask a lot of philosophical questions, sometimes without even needing to find answers to them. You just might be someone who is, I keep thinking of like, someone who got high and then just sort of filmed a YouTube video talking about how we all have to love each other and cherish each other, but then sort of losing track of their thought. And of course, that's not, like if you have Neptune in the 9th, you can also have Uranus or Saturn in the 9th if you're of the Saturn and Capricorn generation. And then it's all going to be mixed. So at times you're going to be more Neptunian and more dreamy, but then at other times you're going to be more Saturnian or Uranian. You may travel towards water more because Neptune is water and 9th house is travel, and have beliefs that are very altruistic or very spiritual. Yeah, let me know how this resonates in the comments below. If you have Pluto in the 9th house, Pluto represents intensity. Pluto represents where we want to dig really deeply. We're not happy with shallow. We want truthful and honest and real, right? So you put Pluto in the 9th house and you want to know everything about the religion you follow. And you may also go through transformations when it comes to your beliefs. You may be born a Catholic and then become a Buddhist and then become Muslim. There's like a lot of different possibilities. Travel can bring shadow experiences, transformational experiences, sometimes maybe darker experiences, maybe eye-opening situations, right? When you are kind of, your worldview turns upside down. Watch out for being too pushy or too sort of obsessive about what you believe in, and obsessive about getting other people to believe what you believe. It's not about forcing them to believe in what they in what you do. Instead, share with the passion you have, but don't try to convince other people. You might enjoy learning about Plutonian things. So learning about death, learning about psychology, learning about archaeology, sociology, like anything that deals with journalism too as well, like anything that deals with bringing the darkness to light, or anything that deals with like understanding the underground currents of the community. Reading about it, watching movies about it, taking classes on it will be especially enjoyable to you. And Pluto in the 9th house could also be a sign of you having a teacher who is this like intense, dark, brooding type person, potentially, that has been in your life. Let me know how this resonates down below. Now, if you have Chiron in the 9th house, Chiron represents the wound. And sometimes Chiron in the 9th can be a sign that you have wounds. You may have like a crisis of faith, right? You may struggle. Maybe your parents were not religious, but you know, like not everybody needs religion, but we are social creatures. We like belonging to something. We like having a community that agrees with that. That's why having an astrology community is supportive too. You don't have to be religious and go to church, but like you still want to have people who share your beliefs. So with Chiron in the 9th house, there might be some kind of blemish or difficulty finding that community. And a lot of times by meditating and praying, even if you're praying to yourself, right? Like there might be those can have like very healing effects on you. There might be bullying in school, or sort of issues with education, some kind of wounding that happened in education, and perhaps fears that are connected to teaching, or doubts when it comes to seeing yourself as a teacher. Sometimes people may go too far in terms of looking for outside validation. Like they might, or you know, they might acquire knowledge constantly because they feel like they don't have enough knowledge. Sort of traveling, taking classes, asking gurus for advice, and not trusting their own gut. And I would give you advice, and you know, this is my placement, so I've definitely experienced the symptoms of this at different parts in my life. I would really urge you to trust yourself, you know, like trust that you already know the answer, that you have wisdom that you gained from the experiences you have been through, and you can actually become a beautiful teacher, very supportive, very loving, very knowledgeable, because you actually understand the value of knowledge and you understand how important it is, and you're able to guide other people towards that. So this is it about the 9th house. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you saw yourself and recognized yourself in some of these descriptions. If you have anything to add, if you want to give me any feedback as far as how you see these placements show up in your life, perhaps you see them through other people, I would really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.